Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Honor the Land. I am Max Loeb. Loeb's Leads here with Chef Zay off of another really tough Cleveland Browns loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, a game that we both thought there should be no way you lose this, and they found a way. Granted, there's a lot of different aspects of it that came into play, a lot of different variables that caused this loss, but post-loss, about 48 hours after the fact, Zay, how are you feeling?
Annoyed, disappointed, frustrated, upset, led astray. There's a plethora of things that I could say about how I'm feeling right now, because if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that we were 1-3, I would have dismissed you. I would have called you crazy. I would have called you a hater. I would have called you every name in the book. But here we are, 1-3 in the easy stretch of our schedule. Yeah. And you're staring at arguably the hottest team in the NFL in the face, with a quarterback who's not only a rookie, but also looks like he's a top 5 quarterback in the league right now. I'm nervous. I think everyone should be nervous right now. I think the players in the locker room need to play with a sense of desperation, because it's almost as like it's win or go home now. Like, it's going to be going through the motions the rest of the year if they lose this week. And as a content creator, I can't deal with it, bro. I can't.
Yeah, it is going to be definitely. I think that the best way to put it in the locker room this week is the atmosphere, the energy, the pressure will feel like a playoff game. Mm-hmm. And the reality is most of that locker room's been there before. And whether or not they won or lost, they have been there before. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Browns. And again, it's not something they are not necessarily used to, but you're right. There's going to be a sense of desperation in the locker room. But I do think there are different avenues the Browns have some optimism moving forward. When you look at the game this past Sunday, Deshaun Watson looked awesome, and it was the best game we had seen all year. The reality is he's an 83-yard touchdown away from, or being called back away from, a 250-plus yard performance, multiple touchdowns. Like, he looked calm. He looked, again, on time. He looked like he was making the right reads, making the right throws, even with the Raiders' B-team defensive line just consistently barreling down on him.
Where you said 250, more like 300. Let's not forget the Amari Cooper off the chest. That was like a 30-yard pass. That, you know what I mean? So, like, Deshaun Watson, I think if there's anything that we should be running with, and I think it's the number one thing we should be running with, I know it's hard to be optimism. Trust me, you're talking to Mr. Optimism. If anybody tries to always pull positive out, it's me, and it's hard. But we gave Deshaun Watson so much crap this past week, and he came out. I think everyone got a target. Everyone that has a catch got that target on the first drive. So everyone was getting involved. It was a signature Kevin Stefanski drive. He made some brilliant throws. Throws that Joe Flacco was making downfield, 15-yard plus throws. He was making them on time. And if we get that Deshaun Watson, we're going to be fine. But here's my thing with it. Where is the in-between after the first drive? How do we fix that? Is that on Deshaun Watson? Is that on the offensive line? Is that the scheme? What is that? Because after you go for a touchdown and you're up 10, why is a 1-yard run the end all be all, and you go pass 3 consecutive times and don't run again 5 plays later? Like, convince me on how do we fix that? Because that's where we go wrong. I know the game's not won in the second or third quarter, but we're atrocious in those quarters.
Yeah, I think, honestly, we've kind of neglected to look at this throughout the beginning of the season, because we walked into it thinking the Browns offense was just going to be so much better. And there was right to believe it, right? You got a new coordinator who had worked with mobile quarterbacks more like Deshaun Watson in the past. You had Dave Njoku. You expected Amari Cooper this year to be like Amari Cooper last year. I think you watch the first 4 weeks, and the reality is the personnel for the Browns isn't talented enough. It's not good enough. Amari Cooper's not playing great. Jerry Jeudy's been their wide receiver one. I think been the best player in the offense throughout the first 4 weeks, but they haven't had Dave Njoku since week 1. Their offensive line is banged up. Your supposed number one receiver, or one of your 1A, 1B receivers, is not playing well. Your receiver depth hasn't really stepped up. I don't know what's going on with Cedric Tillman. Barely been out there too. Like that's the thing. You thought Jerome Ford would be as good as he was last year. He's looked fine, but you bring in Deontay Foreman to get those hard-earned yards. Not really out there a ton again this week. More volume, but not a ton. I just don't think
carries. He doubled his volume from last week.
Exactly. against the bottom 5 run defense in the NFL too. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The talent to me offensively is just not there right now. And like I just said 2 minutes ago, there's optimism because I think Dave Njoku's back this week. Nick Chubb is definitely returning to practice Wednesday. Offensive line maybe get healthier, who knows? But the personnel should get better. But right now, and I think we always play the blame game, and the blame game the past like year and a half has been Watson or Stefanski. And, rightfully so in a lot of different cases. But maybe the players they have are just not good enough.
You know what else? Since we're playing the blame game, there's one guy who's not getting any blame, any notice, and I think it's quite frankly, I think it's borderline. I don't even know the word that I'm looking to search for. I think it's I think it's ridiculous that he's not getting any of this. Andy Dickerson has been god awful since
Yep.
since he's been here.
Yep.
How does DeJuan Jones go from being on the trajectory to being your right tackle for the next 10 years to now having questions to if you even want to have him in the lineup? Well, I'll tell you why. He probably picked up the same diet plan that Andy Dickerson is on. Like, what are we doing right now? He needs to be accountable because our offensive line, and I'm just mentioned this on the live stream. They told us this all off season. It's not like this should have been a surprise. They told us that this offensive line looked bad. They told us that DeJuan Jones took steps backwards, and we sat here and were like, nah, it's just training camp. We'll be fine. Everything's going to pick up where they left off. And here we are 4 weeks in, and the offensive line is the worst in the league. They've given up the most sacks in the league, the most pressures in the league. All of the things that Bill Callahan would not stand for, because he could go out there and pick up a guy off the street and plug him in and be serviceable for the day. So when are we going to, sure, the players are going out there and playing. They account for majority of the blame. But when are we going to look at our coaching staff and be like, we have failed as a coaching staff? Because I look across the board everywhere and coaching has been a problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think there's some blame to be placed on Ken Dorsey, like we talked about, because, you bring in this new offensive scheme, regardless if he's calling plays or not. Like, you are not overhauling an offense, but bringing in some type of new scheme that is supposed to maximize the talent of the players you have around you. And it's just not been the case, not even close to been the case. And I think you're right with the offensive line, especially from what we saw last year. Like, the offensive line at the end of last year was super banged up, and it wasn't good. Like, we can agree it was not good, but it was not this bad. And you had backups playing inside, outside. These guys who
you had guys off the street, literally. Yes, they had Christian guy, Jerome Christian, whatever his name was, literally off the street.
Exactly. And there was a point on Sunday where there was more backups than starters on the Browns offensive line. Actually, for most of the game, not even at a point, most of the game because of Pochich. But the offensive line is supposed to, keep you upright, keep you ahead of the chains. And if you're Deshaun Watson, it's impossible to get into a rhythm playing behind that offensive line. And I think there's been bad games from Watson. We've seen some bad things from Watson, but fully placing the blame on him is not right now, especially after this past game. But you're right. The offensive line is just not been up to par. And even when you had all those guys healthy, you had your offensive line back last or 2 weeks ago against the Giants.
Oh,
yeah, I was thinking Giants when Jed was back in the left side.
Right.
It was basic stuff that the Giants put on tape, stunts, blitzes, simulators that the Browns couldn't pick up, and you had a week to figure it out. You had a week to make some adjustments. Obviously, Jed didn't play this past week, but you had a week to figure it out and at least create some kind of adjustment. The Raiders saw what the Giants put on film, put it into their defensive game plan, and it still ate the Browns alive. That is coaching.
You know what else is coaching? The design of the routes, the scheme of the route. So this is why it's so hard for me to go and be like, yeah, Ken Dorsey, we got to just focus in on him, because at the end of the day, Stefanski's the one calling the plays. He's the one that's ultimately the head honcho on running this offense. It's not Dorsey calling the plays. It could be his scheme or whatever. Maybe the routes that are being designed, but why are you calling it if you're the one with the end all be all? That last screenshot that everyone has of the routes where he should have passed it here and here. Yeah. If you watch that, he had 2 seconds to throw the ball. Literally, he had one read and that was it. Well, the read that he was looking at took 7 yards to develop on a down when you call the timeout to let them design a blitz up for you. So Whose fault is that? Is that Dorsey? Did he pick that play and Stefanski okay it? Because if that is the case, that's a problem as well too. Because as the head coach, as the leader of this team, as the leader of this offense, you should know that we probably shouldn't design 7-8 yard routes that take to develop when you know they're gonna send a blitz package at you after you just gave them a timeout. When you could have just ran with the play when you had everybody up there before that. Again, that's on coaching. That's your head coach, Kevin Stefanski, making that call.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, watching it back, that was, to me, it wasn't a great play call. I'm with you. That was almost a perfect pre-snap coverage disguise from the Raiders. And you talk about getting out coached. Sometimes the other coaching staff is just better than you, and I think they were on that play. Pat Graham was better than Ken Dorsey, Kevin Stefanski on that play, whatever it may be. But like that 40-second runoff where you used a timeout was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So you can go about it two ways. You can walk up to the line of scrimmage. Maybe you take 20, 25 seconds off the play clock. You run your play. You don't get it. You have all three timeouts to stop a run game you had been stopping all day long.
And you know they're running it.
Who knows? Maybe you get the ball back with like 30-ish seconds left, but you're probably at your own 35 or 40. It's a 20-yard chunk play. You get a spike. You get a Hail Mary. Like, at least you have some type of chance. Or you can call a timeout right after that play, regroup, maybe get a better play in. You don't get it. There's still a minute 20, minute 15 left on the clock. You lose 40 off of that. You call your timeouts. You get the ball back with like 20-ish seconds left. Again, chunk play, spike, Hail Mary. You at least give yourself a chance.
But what
Browns did not give themselves a chance.
What have we always talked about has been Kevin Stefanski's one of his biggest, weakest points. His situational football and his awareness has been god awful. Think about how that whole sequence broke down. Nick Harris freaking snapped the ball on the first play after putting you in position. This is all situational football, all coaching aspect. Like, that's why I hate this blame game thing that we play, because everyone wants it to just be one person. When I make my videos on Kevin Stefanski, everyone thinks that I'm honing in on just Kevin Stefanski. This is a team problem. This is a coaching organizational problem. Mm-hmm. Something is wrong here. And where do you go when something's wrong? The leader of it. Clearly the leader doesn't know how to get this ship where it needs to go. I mean, sure, he can manage it and keep you afloat and keep things going and have good stretches, but it's been 5 years of this experiment. His record isn't all hell great like it is just because we're the Browns. Sure, he's been the best we've ever had, but he hasn't won a playoff game yet. The playoff game he won versus the Steelers, he was in a basement. Yeah. That wasn't him. So where is all, like, the 2-time coach of the year thing came in a year in 2020 when, if anybody was going to succeed in a thing like that, it's going to be in the Ivy League guy, where he's going to be able to optimize the situation that it was, where you weren't allowed to go into meetings as much. Like, everything that he can control was at his fingertips. And then the last year was 11 plus injuries on IR. You got 4 different quarterbacks, all these things. So there's never been a point in Kevin Stefanski's career where everything has gone accordingly. It has to be perfect in order for it to look great, and that's a problem. Because I look at the other teams in the division, the Ravens, the Steelers, things aren't going perfect all the time over there, and yet they're finding ways to win. The Steelers are still leading the division somehow when everyone thought that Justin Fields was washed and canned, and they weren't going to be able to win points, and they can't put up 20 points either, and they're still winning games. So when are we going to look at our coaching staff as a whole and be like, something's the problem?
There's a lot of problems. I'm with you. And I think, to the naked eye, I think most Browns fans see that too. It's been, I almost think like the 2-time coach of the year thing is like a crutch. Like, it's year to year. And, it's very different from last year to this year, very different from that 2020 season to this year, but it's a year to year thing. And sometimes you get out coached. Sometimes the coaches around you in the NFL are just better than you are. I don't know when they're going to be taken seriously in terms of moving to a different coach. I don't know if that's the case right now, and it needs to be the case right now. But if it continues along this trajectory and there's glaring schematic or coaching mistakes made on a week-to-week basis, that 2-time coach of the year, like that, it doesn't really mean anything. It shouldn't mean anything this year going forward. You know what I mean?
It shouldn't mean anything. We're 1-3, and our offense hasn't put up 20 points, and we have $180 million that are getting paid throughout this year on our offense. What do you mean it's not on Kevin Stefanski? You had 2020 Deshaun Watson, what everybody wanted, and you still found a way to lose the game. Notice how last year it was we found ways to win. Well, what happened from last year to this year to where we can find ways to win to now going to find ways to lose?
Yep. I hate comparing the Browns to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's like the inverse. Like both those teams have a defense, and I do think this is the biggest point of optimism for the Cleveland Browns. Like you have a good enough defense that you will legitimately be in every single game.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a game you will not be in. But both those teams have great defenses, defense that'll put them in good field position, turn the ball over, put the other teams behind the chains. One team is finding ways to win. The other team is finding ways to lose. I don't know what that comes down to. What do you think the biggest factor in that is? Is it coaching?
It's the mentality. It's the coaching. I don't know if you saw the Rodney McLeod clip,
I
but
did.
Rodney McLeod said he lets the players try to fix majority of the problem. Like when I heard that, that's why I wonder what Ken Carman was feeling when he went, because he dropped his head too. I'm thinking to myself, did he really just say that? Like, and then when he said Jim Schwartz said that great teams are player led, or good teams are coach led, great teams are player led. There's some truth to that. But what great team doesn't have a great coach leading the way? The Chiefs are nothing without Andy Reid. As great as Patrick Mahomes is, I mean, New England. You made that case. I mean, obviously, I won't say nothing. That's a Patrick Mahomes can elevate you to a different level. That's an anomaly. But Andy Reid, Bill Belichick. You think the Eagles won that Super Bowl without Doug Peterson?
Yeah.
You think Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom develops without Pete Carroll embracing it and matching that same energy that they bring to the table? You think these coaches, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, the list goes on when you match great teams with great coaches. It goes hand in hand. And I'm sorry, as good as Kevin Stefanski has been, he's never been great. Last year, the team was great. Last year, they did it because we can't forget Jim Schwartz was new in last year, and we saw what he did. That was a whole new scheme that got implemented in, and it was led by the defense. It wasn't led by the offense. So Kevin Stefanski has never been great. He's only been good, and he's been close to maybe great, and that was managing the chaos that was last year.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think as you move forward this year, they need at least somebody, coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball, to step up. Play calling. Do we think that changes this week, next week, going forward?
I need to ask you that question. What is the change that I really hope that they don't think that David Njoku and Nick Chubb is the sole change that needs to happen on this team. Because that is such a lazy argument, and I'm not here for it, because that's not going to fix the problems that we are visually seeing on this team. David, they're both number one coming off injury. So us as Browns fans already are setting an expectation that we probably shouldn't. We're talking about an high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
David Njoku was a freak. So this is different. He probably should have been put on IR with a high ankle sprain, right? At least 4 games. You know what I mean?
Now, if he misses this coming game, he's been on IR basically.
Basically, right. So I just, if that's your change this week, you better pray to God that it works.
Yeah.
Because next week, if you lose this week and you don't make a change next week, I would have begun to start to lose some kind of faith in the I don't want to say the direction that they're going. Ultimately, I think the direction is altered, but I would lose faith in the coaching and the thing that I really thought I would never lose faith in, because they've given me no reason to. But if you don't make an adjustment this week, I don't know, bro. Like, Dorsey better be calling the plays at the very least a quarter of the season, so we know whether to fire him or not. At least give us the idea that it's not Stefanski.
Absolutely. I'm pro changing something, because you're right. Obviously, what the Browns have right now is not working. And I still think the biggest issue here is the offensive the biggest issue in terms of offensive production is the personnel they have. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough to put up 20 points a game. You know, you watch what they did last year with Flacco, and that was a different case. But I just truly don't think the players they have on offense right now are good enough to put up 20 points a game. Offensive line, no Nick Chubb, no David Njoku,
But
Amari Cooper playing the way he is.
Really, though, as I look across the league, like, Minnesota wasn't looked at to be this great. Green Bay, I mean, yeah, they were looked at to be good, but New Orleans, Atlanta, we don't have more talent than them. Tampa Bay, we don't have more talent than them. Houston, Jacksonville's putting up 20 still. Pittsburgh put up 24. Indy's putting up 27. Rams are still borderline getting there without nothing. Chicago put up 24. Washington's putting up back-to-back 30-plus performances. I mean, like, I'm lowering the bar here. We're supposed to be
Yeah.
talking about the teams that are competing. The Baltimore Ravens just put up 35
Yeah.
on Buffalo after not having a run game, after their offensive line had these issues, after all these things. When are we going to adjust? I just watched a shootout
Yeah.
with the Lions and Seahawks. That was just when you thought Seahawks were about to be put out the game, they answer back.
Yeah.
Like, when are we going to change our standard? Like, I get it, bro. Like, we can't just sit. We have 180 million. I can't sit here and say that we don't have the personnel when we dumped 180 million dollars into this offense, because that would mean that everyone messed up.
Yeah.
Andrew Berry messed up. Kevin Stefanski messed up. Haslam messed up, and then that would put us right back in the same old boat, which is Browns is the Browns.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And when you put that much money in an offense, you expect them to perform. I think it's a mix of things. One, like the guys that are healthy, like DeJuan Jones, Amari Cooper, are just not performing like we thought they were. That is the bottom line there. But I don't know. I think Andrew Berry is, like, in terms of the blame pie, there's a lot of blame to be placed. I still think Andrew Berry has set this roster up for success overall. I think you can say bad things, you can say good things. There's some negative things you can talk about. Overall, he's set this roster up for success. We've been talking for like 20 minutes. We haven't even mentioned the defense because it's that good, and we know we don't need to worry about them. But the offense, I think, is still set up for success. The Jerry Jeudy move plus extension looks unbelievable right now. He's playing out of his mind. Like I said, best player in the offense first 4 weeks of the season. But the guys who are healthy, who you paid or expected to be staples in your offense, like Cooper, DeJuan Jones, just haven't been that good. And then they're banged up. They're banged up along David Njoku. No Nick Chubb, obviously. That's a huge thing. And I think it's weird because we always compare it to last year, the second half of last year with Flacco. Like, it's so weird. You're just slinging the ball down the field. You're scoring all these points last year. You're turning the ball over too, but good, bad, give, take. It's just so hard to expect them to not do what they did last year with lesser personnel, but I just don't think it's good enough right now. They got to get healthy. That, to me, it's not an excuse. It's not the biggest reason this team is not playing like we thought they were, but the fact they're so banged up and then the staples who are healthy are just not playing well, I still think there's a lot of questions about the personnel they have right now.
Here's where my questions come in. Like, why is our offense so different from week to week? Like, there's no consistency in it.
There's
One
no
week,
identity.
there's no identity at all. Like, when you look at the guys that should be getting target, it's not like they're not getting target. Amari Cooper is getting 8-9 targets a game. Jerry Jeudy's getting 9 targets a game. But one week you got Elijah Moore getting 6 targets a game. The next week you got him getting 2 targets. And the next week you got him getting 8 targets. And then another week you got him getting 1 target. Like, there's some merit a little bit to what Elijah Moore's dad was going on Twitter. And I think it's just like, what exactly are we trying to do? I think we know. Why are you handicapping Deshaun Watson even more when you know he has a comfortability with Elijah Moore? He should be getting the 6 to 8 targets a game no matter what. And for the past 2 weeks, he hasn't been getting any targets. And Deontay Foreman, 1 week he rushes for 16 yards or for 16 carries, and he gets 2 carries last week and 4 carries this week. What is the problem? Are we like playing musical chairs with, hey, Dorsey, this week you're gonna run the offense, and then I'll run the off. Are we doing this and they're not telling us this? Because they need to make it clear so we know who to put this damn blame on.
Yeah, I mean they could be. And the thing is, I was thinking about this as I talked about coordinator change. Like, each coordinator has different tendencies, and as bad as the Browns offensively are, I bet they are so difficult to game plan. Just do so many different things. Like, there's no consistency in what they do. Like I said, there's no identity in what they do. So there is, I don't even want to say an advantage in that, but it's worth it. They're taking it with a grain of salt, but there is something worth saying about that. They're trying to get too cute, I think. And it's an offense that you thought would be, we all thought, we still do think, trying to air it out, right?
Did you hear that, Bob? He said they're trying. Where have we heard the term "too cute" before? Who
A
have
lot
we
of places.
thrown that name in all the time? Hmm. I swear I remember for years and years that we always said, "Well, Kevin Stefanski just tries to get too cute with the offense."
It's
Am I
happened.
wrong in that?
No, I don't think so. And like you said, there's so much gray area. Like we can't all just place all the blame on
No, we can't.
Stefanski, but it's really hard to establish an identity, to not get too cute or not try to find ways to get an advantage in terms of game plan, the personnel the defense has versus your offense personnel on a week to week basis. It's so hard to not get caught up in that when you don't have your offensive identity, which I think is Nick Chubb, but your offensive identity. You don't have the run game. And then I say that, and you think, well, where the hell is Deontay Foreman? Because we had him week 2 in Jacksonville, 16 carries, staying ahead of the chains. I think holistically, probably the best the offense has looked, but it's just, you're right. You're playing musical chairs. You don't know what to expect with the Browns offense. You don't know who's going to get the carries, the targets outside of Jerry Jeudy. You just have no idea.
You know what makes my stomach hurt and why my hairline gets pushed back even more is because Nick Chubb's gonna come back and you're gonna look over at this depth chart and I'm trying to prepare people for it. You keep like you just said, our identity is Nick Chubb. I'm sorry, they've been trying to get away from that for.
Yeah.
He's not gonna get 17 to 20 carries a game. Like, and when we and I just can see it now. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Like, just close your eyes and look at the Twitter feeds and the Instagrams and be like, wait, Nick Chubb only got 12 carries today for
Mhm.
79 yards. Why didn't we give him the ball more? We lost the game. Like, it's going to be that, and we are going to sit here and what's the conversation gonna be then, man? Like, I just want people to damper their expectations when Nick Chubb comes back because he's gonna peel off some runs, and you're gonna look over that box score and see that he's taking over Jerome Ford's 10 carries for 58 yards, except it's gonna be 10 for 80.
Yeah. I wonder if, I think it is what's going to happen, especially the first like month or so he's back. He will not get a 20 touch game. There's no shot. Maybe down the line, who knows if he feels healthy. But I do wonder, like, if you have a guy like Nick Chubb, you feel really comfortable. It's like 12 carries a game. You're giving him that. He's being very efficient, 5+ yards per carry. I wonder if they feel so comfortable in that, then they lean a little more into Jerome Ford in the run game as that second guy. Because most of the time, if you have a really good running back, your second running back will step in and still be pretty efficient. Maybe that helps them out in the run game. Maybe they start to ground and pound a little bit more. But this is an offense, like we said, it's not built to do that, especially because what we've seen with Ken Dorsey and Buffalo a couple of years ago, it's not how it's supposed to operate. And you're right. The classic Nick Chubb 100+ yard game where he's 4.5 yards a carry, getting the ball 20 times a game, like that, it's not going to happen. At least I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I should say anytime soon. I think it could later on in the year. Anytime soon, though, no way.
I don't even think later on in the year. Like, we gotta remember, like, see, there's parts to these games that these coaches and like, remember, this is a game. It's an entertainment business. They got to move at certain parts. Nick Chubb's on an incentive based contract.
Yeah.
I know as much as they want to do right by Nick Chubb, they still want to get the upper hand in that situation. They don't want to see Nick Chubb come out here and go for 1,300 yards, whatever, or 1,200 yards on X amount of carries and do it.
Financially, they don't. Financially, yeah.
No, financial, and that's what I'm saying. Like, the business aspect of it, like, and I don't think they are holistically thinking about that. If they don't do that, I think they'd have no problem having that conversation at the end of the year where it's like, okay, let's come to an even kill. They would do right by that. But it's the game that they like to play and looking ahead and all this stuff. They want to give Nick Chubb the ball 8 to 10 times a game and let him be effective in that aspect and have Deshaun Watson carry the load. So they can go to Nick Chubb and be like, let's retire you a Brown. Let's give you a fair contract and let's get this done. But if he come back like AP with an AP comeback season, we can kiss Nick Chubb out of the damn door.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? That would be a good problem to have. But you're right. I mean, that would be, you would move on from him. I think it's so tough to gauge what this offense is going to do even this coming week, because like we talked about, we don't think Nick Chubb will be back this week, but he's practicing this week, and obviously they opened the window for him. So if he's going to play this year, which I'd be shocked if he didn't, it's got to be the next 3 weeks. So he'll be back soon. You think David Njoku's back this week? What do they do offensively differently this coming week against Washington that can give them a better chance?
I say it every week, and I can't stand that I say it every week. You have to establish a run game. Like when you look at this play-by-play look back, they the second we run the ball for a no gain or a 1 yard run, we instantly retreat to consecutive passes,
Mhm.
3 consecutive passes. It's almost as if he loses faith in the run game way too fast. And that's just not. I look over at the other side, and Zamir White has 17 carries and he only got 50 yards. That tells me a coach that didn't give up on him still. He let him go out there and tote the rock. And as we've seen with Jerome Ford, I tell you, he gets better with time. It's only a matter of time before he breaks out a long run. Every single week, it's only a matter of time. So it starts with what we have always built our bread and butter on, and that's the run game. Even if it's, and that's where I put the blame on Andy Dickerson. At the very least, he should know how to capitalize on our best strong suit, which is the run game. And we can't run the damn ball. Bill Callahan would at the very least have backups be able to let us run the ball. And I'm looking over at the cheat. He still went for 5.8 yards per carry and 4 yards per carry, even though that 35-yard was the bulk of that. You get better with time, like I said.
Yeah, and the identity of running the ball, I think this week against Washington, who's been okay against the run, like I think it's very comparable to. I think this Washington defense is very comparable to what the Browns saw against the Giants in Week 3. If you're the Browns, you know you don't have an advantage up front. That's the reality. But secondary, some places to attack for sure. Can you establish the run and put yourself into more favorable positions to attack? That's the question. Because like you watch that Week 3 game and you force the fumble on the opening kickoff, you score the next play, no touchdowns till the end of the game. After that, the offense looked anemic. Deshaun Watson was in the ground for the majority of the first half too. You got to establish the run to start the game, and you got to make sure Washington feels you, because at the end of the day, that offense is red hot, right? Jaden Daniels playing out of his mind. They are running the ball out of their mind. They are running the ball really well. That's going to be, I think, the biggest test for the Browns on the ground so far this year. But they legitimately score every time they have the ball, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown.
They haven't punted all year.
They score. They get the ball and they score. That's what they do. So if you're the Browns, like you want to do everything you can to keep that offense off the field. It's the old Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes adage. Just you don't got to worry about him if he's not on the field, right? Take whatever that was, 9-minute drive you had to start the game against the Raiders, and take a page out of that book, keep them off the field, make it hard for them to get into a rhythm too, because that's a very real thing.
These guys are running the ball more. This is what I'm saying. Like the running game is so slept on in today's world. I've said this on past, I think back-to-back episodes on here about how the running game just needs to get more love, bro. They ran the ball 37 times against the Cardinals last week. 21 of those coming from Brian Robinson on a 4.8 yard per carry, 21 carries for 101 yards. Jaden Daniels, 8 carries for 47, and then McNeil's the backup, 8 for 68. So he went 8.5 yards per carry. It's definitely going to be a test for us, and it's like if you cannot come out of this game down.
No.
Because the second they go down, they really go away from the run, and that's just gonna be easy picking. So I'm gonna be, I don't know, man. I just need to see something different. I've tried to sit here and convince myself of different things. I think the positive thing that I can come away with out of this whole week is Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
He's gonna have to be Superman. I hope he's getting to that stage where we're going to start to see one of those games where it's like, oh my God, he did it all. Like we didn't have a chance, but he did it all. If we can get one of those games, I think it'll at least, get this ship on course for at least a week. And, we need it as Browns fans because it's desperate. We're desperate over here, man.
Yeah, it's bad. It is really bad. And I think two things to note about that. They did that last week on the ground without Austin Eckler, who I have kind of been a little skeptical of just in general because of the age, because of the wear and tear. From what I had seen weeks 2 and 3, looked really, really good. Looks healthy. Looks like he's got a little bit of burst back, probably because he's not getting the ball 20 times a game like he once was. But they did that without their true backup running back. He'll be back this week. While we're on the topic of defense, though, because we really haven't talked about it, they looked fine last week, but I do have a player I want to talk about that's a little scary. I'm not going to lie, Martin Emerson. Now, he's been good. He was good last year, but I think teams are starting to see if you have a good receiver or a good route runner who's technically savvy, you can attack him. And that scares me because we looked at the Browns secondary all offseason. We knew the corners were great. The safeties had to play well if they wanted to keep that elite standard in the secondary. And I think they have. Grant Delpit's been unreal. Grant Delpit's been unreal to start this year. I think teams are starting to see a little bit of a weakness in Martin Emerson. And that kind of worries me because last week or 2 weeks ago, it was Malik Neighbors, and that's a different animal. Like, that's a different beast. He's one of the best players in the world right now. They did it with Jacoby Myers a little bit this week. Looking at the stats, top 25 or bottom 25, in yards allowed, bottom 25 in coverage grade. He is the 96th highest graded corner in the entire NFL right now. So, like, the elite standard of Martin Emerson that we saw last year has not been there this year. The Browns will stop the run. They'll do that all the time. But now you have a red-hot receiver in Terry McLaurin coming in. So whether they travel Ward with him like they did with Neighbors in the first or second half of the Giants game, whether they just put Emerson out there, say, hey, you can go cover him, we trust you. That, to me, right now is the biggest weakness in this Browns defense, which is crazy because I did not think I would be saying that coming into week 5.
Well, he's definitely struggled, but here's what I'll counter to that and say is, one complements the other. And the one thing that the Browns have not been able to do this year, which they were great at last year, was creating pressure with 4 guys. Not only have they not been able to create pressure with 4 guys, but they've been blitzing more guys, which means that the corners aren't playing press as much. These guys are press corners. How many times did I was watching the highlights when I was doing my edits, and there were so many plays where Martin Emerson was just 5 to 7 yards off the ball. That's not his game.
Yep, you're right.
He's a big, tall, physical guy. I know you're a numbers guy, so if you could get some numbers for us one of these days on how much he's been playing off versus press, I think that plays into it. But I think our defensive line is a big reason why our corners are getting as torched and as exposed as they have been. We just aren't getting any pressure up front. And when we do get the pressure up front, the quarterbacks are taking what the defense is giving them, a la the checkdowns, and they're killing us on it. So
yeah, they really are. And that was what I noticed that with Jacoby Myers a lot last week. A lot of off coverage. And I don't care how good you are. I don't care how athletic you are, savvy you are. You're not stopping a 5-yard out if you're playing off-man coverage. I get that. It's not working. It's not going to work. But I'm with you. I would be fascinated to see that too. That's not his game. And if you're the Cleveland Browns, like, you got to find ways to manifest some pressure. And it can't just be Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett was unbelievable this past Sunday again. It can't just be him. The other guys got to step up. We talked about how good this defensive line was, how deep this defensive line was. Well, it is a big loss losing Mo Hurst. But, like, where's Obo? Where's Zadarius Smith? Like, guys like that, somebody's got to step up. But looking forward to the Washington game, we'll end with this. I want you to convince Browns fans that there is optimism with this offense. The defense is great. Convince Browns fans there's optimism with this offense.
I've been trying to do it for the past 2 days, but, I'm Mr. Optimistic. There's one thing that we can run with right now, and that's the most recent thing that we saw, and that's Deshaun Watson.
Yes.
You pay this man $230 million. Has he pulled out the $230 million price tag? Not even close. We all know that. But you stop trying to get grand slams every time he steps up to the plate, when sometimes we got to get these bases loaded first. We got to stack some performances. We got to let him get better. He's gotten better every week this year. It may not be in the way that you want it. It may not be the big jump like we all want, but each week we can take something away and be like, okay, he's gotten better in this area. We saw the most passion we've ever saw to Deshaun Watson this past week.
Yeah.
He yelled at the top of his lungs at DeJuan Jones. And then we were blessed enough to get the camera to pan over to him on the sideline with him on his arms and galvanizing his team, and DeJuan Jones taking that teaching moment. Yes, sir. And seeing that, you want to see every bit of that. And as far as the optimism goes of why you should look forward to the season, everyone wants Deshaun Watson to live up to this $230 million price tag, right? But nobody wants the situation to present itself. What better way to prove to people than to be like, hey, we started out the season 1-3. I galvanized this team to peel off X amount of games in a row, and we found a way to make this season a success at the hands of me. That would
Mhm.
put to bed any conversation we
Oh,
have
yeah.
about was the contract worth it? Because if he can pull this team out of the dumpster fire that it is, 1-3 with 1-4 potentially staring you in the face right now, I don't want to hear anything about the price tag because he would have earned it, even if it has just been for this one season.
Yeah. This is the make or break season. Obviously, the money, you can't really do anything about the next couple of years, but this is it. And I'm so glad you brought up the emotion because I think a lot of people and the very casual person would say this, but a lot of people are like, he got his money, he doesn't care. If you watch that game Sunday, that could not be farther from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
He does care. He wants to win. And that was the first time I felt like the Browns had a chance because they had Deshaun Watson. Everything was bad for the Browns. Everything was bad for the Browns. The offensive line, even in the first half, that defense, first half, early third quarter, that defense got out schemed like they did. We know how good they are. They got out schemed. The
I said it
Raiders
looked
had them
like
in
Joe
hell for,
Woods.
yeah. Yep. The Raiders had him in hell for probably 20, 25 minutes. The offensive line was bad. Amari Cooper had the big drop. A touchdown was called back. An 83-yard touchdown was called back for a phantom holding call. But that was the first time I felt like the Cleveland Browns had a chance to win because we had Deshaun Watson and they didn't. That to me is enough optimism to move forward. And you talk about the quarterback position. You needed to win games in the NFL. First time I felt like the Browns had not necessarily like an advantage because I think you can say that about a lot of games, game to game basis. They probably had a quarterback advantage in week 2 against Jacksonville, like whatever. But they had some spark of hope, some quality of player that could almost single-handedly bring them back. That was the first time I felt like it. And if that doesn't do enough optimism for you, I don't know what will. You're getting Dave. You think you're getting David Njoku back this week. I don't want to guarantee anything. Hopefully your offensive line is healthier. Nick Chubb probably not going to play this week, but he's going to practice. That can be optimism. And anytime you have that defense, you can stay in a game, right? And Dustin Hopkins, we didn't even talk about the 56 versus 58-yard field goal thing, but Dustin Hopkins today, Tuesday, actually, his birthday. Happy birthday, Dustin Hopkins. But we didn't even talk about that. You have a weapon at kicker, even though that extra point killed him. You have a weapon at kicker. Corey Bojorquez he is punting his ass off.
We got to touch on that before we get out of here, bro. Like, because tell me that does not mess with your confidence. I
Oh
just
my
came out
God.
here in a 56-yarder, bro. You're not going to let me kick a 50. You just gave me 20-something million guaranteed to kick these field goals. I've been damn near perfect. What, he's missed 1 or 2 50-yarders since he's been here. And then in the moment you needed him most, he misses. Like,
Yep.
that is messing with your player's confidence, is it not?
What was the next kick after Stefanski said, no, we're not kicking the 58-yard field goal?
That one.
Exactly.
Like, that is coaching. Amari Cooper, that Kevin Stefanski really dropped that one. Okay, well, he dropped the ball on this one because that's 4 points in a swing right there at the hands of your coach. I'm sorry. That's coaching, bro.
100%. It's situational coaching too, because every single week I walk into the Browns offense and, they scored first drive versus the Giants, first drive versus the Raiders. I don't think they scored first drive versus Jacksonville, but they had the 90-yard drive. The next drive, they kicked a field goal versus Dallas first drive. Kevin Stefanski might be the best opening script play caller in the world right now, not named Andy Reid. I'm going to say that. Not named Andy Reid. But after that, like you're giving yourself 7 or 3 points to start the game and you still haven't reached 20 points this year.
A 10-point lead and you end up with you have a 10-point lead and you only have 22 carries for the game. How, Sway?
I don't know.
I would have ran the ball 13 times in a row with a 10-point lead with their backup, with their best defensive player out. What are we talking about?
Yeah, that was best defensive and best offensive player out, and the Browns found a way to lose. You find ways to win, you find ways to lose, and the Cleveland Browns found a way to lose again. 1-3, heading to Washington. We will talk about Washington a little bit later on in the week. It's going to be a crazy game. I personally think it's, outside looking in from the neutral point of view, a very big trap game for the Washington Commanders, so we will talk about that. But, Zay, any final words before we sign off, other than there is some optimism? Don't freak out just too much. It's also only a quarter of the way through the season. You'd rather get hot at the end than play your best ball now.
Save the pitchforks and fire for after this week. Listen. I'm Mr. Optimistic. We gotta stay strong. We gotta be positive. We gotta run with the positives. But I'm telling you now, if we lose next week, I don't know how we hold it anymore. I don't. I truly don't. I'll run out of I don't know if I'll run out of optimism, but it's gonna be hard to do it. But hold out another week, like Max says, it's a perfect opportunity for it to be a trap game. Washington's got to come down sooner or later off of this, Jaden Daniels magic run that he's on. And what better time to do it when your back is against the wall and everyone, even your own team, is counting you out. So we've been in this situation before. It's nothing to be, scared of, even though I'm a little scared. But with that being said, here we go, Brownies. Here we go.
Hoo. All right, guys, we appreciate you. Again, if you're new, make sure you subscribe, leave a like on the video, as well as comment your 2 cents on everything that we talked about. Cleveland Browns, Washington Commanders this coming Sunday. We will see you guys next time. Appreciate you tuning in.